Billy Wessels covers 247 Sports, TCU Athletics right there on that platform, and joins us on a regular basis to talk up the Horned Frogs, and joins us here on National Signing Day. And of course, even though about 90% were signed back in December, it's a good time to wrap up the class and see what odds and ends are coming in. Billy, appreciate you stopping by, man.
Oh, yeah, not a problem. Always a pleasure.
Good stuff. All right. So you signed yourself a junior college defensive back today.
Yeah, nothing too crazy for TCU today. The bulk of their guys came in December signing day, but Abraham Kamara from Alpharetta, Georgia, Coffeyville Community College was the number one JUCO safety according to 247 Sports, and the number 43 overall player as far as junior college guys go. So he's a pretty high-level guy, and with TCU losing two safeties going early to the NFL draft, it's an immediate area of need. So bringing in Abraham Kamara to come in and fill that void is definitely something that the team's looking out for.
You look at the class there, according to 247 Sports, it's number 61 in the nation. Just your thoughts about certainly Gary Patterson has a long history of taking classes that don't look impressive on paper and turning them into conference contenders.
Yeah, you kind of got to give him the benefit of the doubt at this point, right? But also, if that number gets tweaked a little bit because there's 21 signees. Or 22, I guess now technically officially signees, a couple transfers. This was a relatively new, it's going to be a really small class. Also, two of these guys that signed were officially part of last year's class. So, like, they were officially 2020 guys, so they're not in the 2021 rankings by 247 or Rivals or any of those recruiting services. So that it looks a little better than that. It's probably somewhere in the high, like the low 50s, maybe high 40s, which is, again, it's a little worse. I don't know, higher or lower. It's all relative, right? Raise the thermostat, lower the thermostat. I don't know how you go in your household. But so the number is really probably closer to 40 than it is 60, like it comes up there on the screen, because of the two guys that are coming in. Plus the grad transfers they got today are huge. They've announced the biggest one, literally the hugest one, is Obina Easy, 6'8", 315 left tackle from Memphis. So bringing him in, they lost a couple guys to the transfer portal on the offensive line. A really unit that struggled most of last season for TCU, but started to come on strong. So getting that big guy to kind of plug in at left tackle or right tackle is going to be huge for TCU this season.
So I take it the Memphis player had a pretty substantial run of playing time there at Memphis, and that's why
started the last two plus seasons there. So he's a really dependable guy. And they also added TJ Carter. They basically just ravaged Memphis. TJ Carter was a grad transfer from Memphis as well. He was a cornerback there, had 5 interceptions as a freshman. Didn't play as much last year due to injury. He's going to move to safety coming over to TCU. Again, TCU's losing Ardarius Washington and Trevon Merrick to the NFL draft. So they plugged in two safeties officially today, Abraham Kamara and TJ Carter, that have experience, that have played well.
I'd like to remind everybody there in the live chat that we're locked in here talking college football with you every day, and specifically today, literally locked in here for about 10 or 12 hours talking up National Signing Day. So I'm not keeping track of all these signings. So if there are any of note, and you guys have done a great job of supplying me with 4 or 5 to pass along, please drop them there in the live chat, as well as any questions on TCU football or any comments about the Horned Frogs. I see Aaron Hackett is coming in from Syracuse as the tight end, 37 catches, 9 touchdowns.
TCU's also got two tight ends going pro, to Artavius Lynn and Pro Wells. Pro Wells is the more substantial one. He's leaving early, had plenty. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but led the team in touchdowns 2 years ago. So he's a very productive, a big body tight end that I think he'll be a good pickup by somebody probably in the later rounds of the draft, but he's leaving a little bit early to go pro. So yeah, getting some depth at tight end, and we see that also in the signing class too. Jasper Lott is a tight end from Argyle, which is near TCU if you're not familiar with the area. Jasper Lott, who is dad works for the I think the 49ers front office. The Chargers front office, sorry. So his dad works in NFL front office, very familiar with college football and NFL football. He's a football guy. Could also play some tackle coming here. And then also DeAndre Rogers, I think he calls him DJ Rogers, a tight end from Washington State, is another guy who is a big body and fast, 6'3", 230. So they're reloading the tight end spot. You mentioned the Syracuse kid too, so it's another area they need to reload. Tight ends and safeties are areas that were big emphasis for TCU this offseason.
Got Billy Wessels on the line talking up TCU football for 247 Sports. We appreciate Billy joining us to talk up the Horned Frogs. Kenny Hill, quarterback there at Texas A&M, came into TCU, finished up his time there. Now as a quarterback's coach for the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, officially, Gary Patterson made the announcements today during our signing day Zoom. Wasn't a big shocker. I think about a week or so ago, he subtly changed his Twitter bio to say TCU quarterback coach. So something we saw coming from a mile away. It wasn't a big shocker. Sonny Cumbie was a co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for the last 4 years, and then went to Texas since 2014. So I guess 6 years. Wow. So he moved off back to his alma mater at Texas Tech. Kenny Hill gets to come coach for his alma mater officially too. So new quarterback coach officially. But as far as offensive coordinator Doug Meacham, who served that role in 14 and 15 and 16, left for a couple of years. He's back. He's now the offensive coordinator again in sole propriety for the offensive minds. But Kenny Hill is a guy that recruits a lot. And if you look at the recruiting class for TCU brought in both December and today they were able to announce that Chandler Morris is transferring from Oklahoma. I think he played in the Big 12 title game. I think he caught a touchdown on a weird play in the Big 12 title game. And then 2 days later announced he was transferring to TCU. They bring in him to compete in the quarterback room. I think Max Duggan's still your clear number 1 starter, but he's kind of going to compete for the backup job with the other guys they brought in at quarterback, including Alexander Honig, the big German. We call him Purple Dirk down here. So a big German guy coming in, 6'6", 230, literal giant German invading America here to come play some quarterback. Sam Jackson, yeah, that guy, 5'11", 170 from Naperville, Illinois. And then Trent Battle is a quarterback in high school as well. He's a guy I think could be playing a different position once he gets in and works out. But GP said today that, hey, I don't want to tell anyone they're moving positions today after all.
So the German quarterback, he signs and somebody jumps on a nickname right away.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's also in the DFW area, Dirk is obviously a god, right? So it's like, oh, here's what the one connection we have formidable. So we're calling him Purple Dirk. I don't know if he likes that or knows about it yet, but we're pretty excited to see what he can do here at TCU. I think it's still Max Duggan's team for probably 2 more years at least, but then it's up for grabs for potentially one of these guys. I mean, they got 4 guys to choose from in the 20 guys they signed.
So just to clean up the comings and goings from a personnel standpoint, this transfer portal has obviously become crazy for everyone to try to track where everyone's headed. But in addition to that, obviously the early entries into the NFL draft, you had mentioned a couple of the players at tight end moving on. So run us down who's entered early and what kind of gaps those leave.
Okay, so guys, the left tackle TJ Stormont was a grad transfer from Colorado State last year. Played a season. He is now transferring again to Texas Tech. So they have a whole left tackle that's open. Easy is going to fill out. A couple receivers moved on. John Stevens and Valence Hunt moved on. TCU brought in a couple receivers in this class. TJ Steele, Quincy Brown among them to kind of fill that void. Also, they have a really young Quentin Johnson was a breakout guy last year, as a true freshman. Tay Barber coming back, so still feel pretty good about wide receiver. Running back Zach Evans is the 5-star. I expect him to do really well again. They also added Amonte Watkins, another 4-star running back from the Houston area. So just reloading at that pipeline. And the 2 tight ends leaving early to go pro. Not a big shocker there. On the defensive line, TCU brings back everybody, I think, on the defensive line, including Corey Bethley coming back for another year. He had an injury-shortened season his senior year. He's a guy that could potentially be an NFL draft pick, probably a later round guy. And then Kari Coleman was a breakout guy last year as a true freshman. I think he led the nation for tackles for loss among freshmen. Absolute star there. So you're pretty well set at the defensive line for the next year or two. But GP mentioned today they're going to go out and recruit a couple more defensive ends, either grad transfers or transfer portals. He mentioned today that some conferences and junior colleges are about to play in the spring. So you'll see even more transfer guys happening in the April-May area when those seasons wrap up. So it wouldn't be a total shocker there to see TCU go scoop up another defensive end or defensive tackle or something like that. At linebacker, Garrett Wallow is one of the all-time leading tacklers in school history, but he played 4 years. He's going pro. It wasn't a shocker when he announced it. Would have loved to have him back one more time because this year didn't count for anything, but he's going pro. He'll be a mid-round draft pick. He's from the New Orleans area. Not a shocker there. So the second linebacker spot is really up for grabs. D. Winters kind of took hold of one of the spots last year, but now not sure who's going to be the second linebacker this year. It could be Wyatt Harris, who's from the Fort Worth area. It could be one of these guys they signed this class with Javion Gibson from the Houston area. So the second tight ends or the second linebacker spot is going to be a really interesting spot for TCU this year. Cornerbacks, They're pretty well stocked. Their number one corner got hurt in the middle of the season last year, Noah Daniels. Keon Stewart is the number 3 corner. He got hurt in the middle of the season last year. So they'll both be back. They're 1 and they're 3. 2, Trey Tomlinson was phenomenal last season. Just an unreal redshirt freshman year for him. He's becoming almost a true number 1. He'll probably be he wears number 1. He'll probably be the number 1 corner going forward for TCU the next 3 years. And that last name should sound familiar. He's the nephew of LaDainian Tomlinson, noted TCU alum, probably the most famous TCU alum there is. And so you're pretty well set at corner for the foreseeable future. And CJ Caesar, he used to be Hidari in high school, is probably taking over the number 3 or 4 corner spot as well. At safety is kind of the big question mark because you're losing 2 of your 3 starters with Ardarius Washington and Trey Merrick. Trey Merrick, potentially a first-round draft pick. Ardarius Washington, a 2nd or 3rd. No surprise, Trey Merrick's going. He won the Jim Thorpe Award for best defensive back in the country this year. Ardarius was a bit of a shocker, I think, even like to the fans and coaching staff that he left early because he had a really great season in 2019. Wasn't as good in 2020. He's also about 5'9", $180 dripping wet. So can they get back to the Andy Dalton days? Hope so. I think Max Duggan. I've always called Max Duggan kind of Andy Dalton 2.0 because he's faster, got the red hair. So he's a guy that I think can lead TCU to that level. And then at safety spots, so you're bringing back LaKendrick Van Zant. He will be the 1 starter. And the 2 spots are really still up for grabs. We saw a little bit of Josh Foster last season. He was a high school champion, state champion quarterback in high school, moved to safety. He's played really well. Nuke Bradford was a transfer 2 years ago. He's come in and played really well at times too. So if I had to guess, your starters next year at safety are going to be Nuke Bradford, LaKendrick Van Zant, and Josh Foster, with a couple guys like these transfers, TJ Carter and Abraham Kamara that I mentioned earlier. I might have spoken way too fast. I might have given you way too much information you asked for, but there you go.
Hey, we'll take it too much. Too much is just enough here because we talk college football constantly. So everybody out there expects it from us. So we appreciate that, Billy. We'll take it. We will take it. So we're going to play right off of Mr. HD's comment here about Andy Dalton. Man, okay. So I'm the guy that watches 3 to 4 to 5 up to 7 TCU games a year, depending on how good they are. So I've got an idea of the good personnel and so forth, but I can't dissect it anywhere close to what you can. So this is my viewpoint of the program is go back to the Andy Dalton days. Finishing undefeated a number of times, going to BCS bowl games, winning a Rose Bowl, and then on into that 2014 season in which they could have made a playoff, should have made a playoff, through 2017 even, in which they reached the Big 12 championship game, finishing the top 10 at 10-3. And now we're looking at 18, 19, and 20. We're looking at 3 consecutive, basically down seasons. Not horrible. 6-4 last year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there are plenty of factors involved, but you mentioned Max Duggan. He doesn't excite me as a quarterback. I don't want to be too harsh on him because I haven't, again, evaluated every throw or anything like that to stamp him in any particular way. Just kind of your thoughts about the state of the program, where it's at right now, based on what it's been able to accomplish under Gary Patterson here in the last 10 years.
Yeah, looking at obviously the Rose Bowl and Peach Bowl teams were 2 of the greatest teams ever, arguably 2 of the best in college football history, in my opinion. But looking at what they've done the last couple of years, obviously it's a downer for TCU. For a lot of programs, those would be successful seasons. But what Gary Patterson's built, what he's done after his 20th season this past year, yeah, he wants more than that. I still think he's holding out for one run in a national title, and if he wins that, it wouldn't surprise me if he sailed off into the sunset. So is TCU close to there? I think yes, and I'm a bit of a homer, obviously. But 2 years ago, sitting at in the Oklahoma press box, I wrote a big column about how, hey, in 2021, this team is going to come into Norman and win, and also going to win the Big 12 and make the playoff in 2021. My hype train for this year has been built for the last 2 or 3 seasons. Knowing what they have and what they've brought in, you trust the Gary Patterson defense always, right? The way the defensive backs have really played makes me believe this could become one of the best defenses that Gary Patterson's ever coached, based on their returning personnel at corner. Because if you notice those years, they had really shut down lockdown corners as well. And the defensive line was phenomenal. The last year or so, been a real struggle on the defensive line. This year, you trust this defensive line is going to be back to one of the best in the country again. Kari Coleman is that good of a true freshman last year. Put a little bit of meat on his bones. He's going to be phenomenal. The defensive tackles are both really young too. I do think I put all my eggs in 2021 2 years ago. Like I said, I think this team is going to be the team to watch. A lot of people are saying, oh, look at the sleeper team in the Big 12. It's TCU this year. And I really do agree with that. It's about the offense. So, and you mentioned Max Duggan's kind of your segue into this. We've seen the good and the bad. It's really hard to take what you saw last year, because I don't know if you're too familiar with where he had the heart condition, didn't missed all of fall camp, got thrust into action in the first game of the season. It was such a tough year to watch him develop and gut through things, as bad as the offensive line was the first half of the season. Second half of the season, the offensive line played better. He played better. TCU, I think, had won 4 games in a row to end of the season, if I remember correctly. I think they would have smoked Arkansas in the bowl game if they couldn't get to play because of COVID. The team was on fire towards the end of the year. Quentin Johnston, Zach Evans. They have so many weapons on offense. And Duggan, the passer, sure, it's almost a middle-of-the-road arm right now for basically a true sophomore. I think he didn't throw an interception as a true freshman until his 6th game. So we've seen some good, we've seen some bad. The thing about him is those legs are electric. And at the college level, you have a guy that no one can tackle. It's like Trevon Boykin. You're putting Trevon Boykin's legs. That might be blasphemous. But Duggan is that fast. We watched him against Texas Tech. He had 2 touchdown runs of 60-plus yards. I know it's not an amazing defense, but you see the speed. He iced the Texas game. He ran it down their throat 40 yards. He's just a lightning bolt waiting to strike. And you pair him with these guys that are developing, Quentin Johnston, Zach Evans, Tay Barber at receiver as well. Blair Conright's a receiver that I love that not many people talk about. He was really good for half the season last year, got hurt midway through, didn't finish. So I think Blair Conright's a name to keep your eye on as far as breakout receivers this season. And Duggan, I think he's going to be really good. This offensive line is going to be different once again, which is a bit of a bummer, but Obina Easy has the experience to play that left tackle spot really well, is what TCU needs to be competitive at that offensive line spot. And that was the shock. That was the most disappointing part of the team last year, was how the offensive line played. So yeah, I'm still hyped on 2021. I think your Big 12 title game next year is TCU versus Oklahoma. Go ahead and get my tickets ready, get everything ready to go. I think TCU is that good this year. I think you'll see them again in the playoff rankings in the top 10 at some point this year.
And I'm looking at the 2021 schedule, which features, of course, I like to tout as the truest conference championship anywhere in the Power 5. It's the only conference that everybody plays everyone. So it's as legit as it can be. So you've got 2 non-conference games. So what's wrong with my math here? 9 conference games. There's only 2 non-conference games scheduled, Cal and SMU.
Yeah, they haven't officially announced the 3rd game, but it's been published in numerous places. They have an agreement with Duquesne to be the gimme game, the cupcake game. So I'm sure that'll be the first game, and then they play Cal, SMU, and they're all at home. That's another thing. All 3 non-conference games are going to be at home this year. So you like the way that sets up the 2 toughies. You have to go to both Oklahoma schools, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Is going to be really tough. Obviously, a really difficult move there. But your non-conference, you're not too worried about. SMU obviously has been a darling the last 2 years. Came in and shocked TCU in 2019. They're losing their quarterback. They're losing a bunch of pieces. They also have an Oklahoma grad transfer. Mordecai is going to be their quarterback next year too. So they've lost quite a bit. And again, no one's taking them for granted anymore. But I think TCU once again this year has the talent advantage on SMU. And Cal, since that adorable Cheez-It Bowl a couple years ago, I don't think is quite what they were that year, because they had an elite defense that year. I don't know if they're as well rounded then as they are now, or now as they were then. So I'm thinking TCU goes 3-0 in the bowl games. They'll probably lose one conference game in there because it's just going to happen. But I think they beat Oklahoma. I'm gonna say they sweep them. They win the Big 12 next year. That's what I'm saying. But
they trip up against somebody else. They sweep Oklahoma. They win the non-conference games. They go 12-1.
There you go. That's putting it in. And then they get snubbed again. They're suddenly number 6 when the playoff committee comes out. So,
well, that I wouldn't be surprised. Well, if they win the Big 12, that should be enough.
With one loss, that's the thing. They're going to let a 4-7 Ohio State in or something like that. So it's going to be fine.
Ohio State does go 4-7 a lot.
Yeah, clearly that's his last decade. Yes.
Billy Russell's on the line from 247 Sports TCU site there. Always a good time with Billy. I want to remind everyone that, yes, we've got individual live streams going all day. So you can't stay on the same live stream because we want to shut them down so people rewatching can just lock in on the team that they want to see. So we're going to shut this down. We'll be back in just a couple minutes, 5 o'clock Eastern time, talking Georgia. Billy, appreciate you stopping by, man.
Yeah, not a problem. Anytime. I guess talk to you sometime in the off season.
Absolutely. A little spring practice preview.
Yes, sir.
Sounds good. Everybody else, we'll see you at 5 o'clock Eastern, just a few minutes talking